Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Index Office Hours. Today is the 15th of April, and this is Index Office Hours 203. Thank you, Juan, for putting that sound effect on for my intro there. Really appreciate that. So for anyone who is new to Index Office Hours, this is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexes. You know what I'm going to say next. It's my famous line. This is a conversation and we do love participation. So if you'd like to get involved in today's conversation, please do via voice or chat. I can see many of you are already in the chat right now. Yeah, this is a conversation indeed, Billy. That is right. So do get involved. We love the participation. Um, if you're having any challenges with the mic, then please do let me know. And yeah, oh my God, you guys have nailed it. This is perfect. This is indeed recorded. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. Sounds like Louis is concerned about privacy. So you know what to do. No funny business in the chat or on the mic. So that, or I guess, or yeah, yeah. This is really funny. Okay, let's keep it up. Let's keep us on the road, on track. Um, that's everything. That's everything. We have an exciting agenda, and I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm just gonna throw it straight to Anna for Reaper Watch. So Anna, without further ado, feel free to take us into Reaper Watch.
Thank you, Abel, and hello, Ryan. Okay, so Repo Watch this week, starting with the read, we have a new release. This is 139, which is a patch release that includes some RPC fixes that are crucial for blockchain operations. It also prepares for the upcoming Sepolia Isthmus hard fork. So all operators, especially those using read, should update due to these important changes. Then we have two new releases from Firehouse Ethereum. So we have 2.11.6, which enhances documentation for block versions and addresses known issues in version 3, aiding operations and systems management. This is an important for usability release, but not critical. And then we have 2.11.7, which adds supports for balance change a reason reward that's needed for optimistic rollouts and enhances operational capabilities. Again, an important update, but not urgent. We also have a new release from Arbitrum Nitro. This is version 3.5.5, which releases a new Docker image that includes critical bug fixes, some particularly for trace calls and some Tempus validation plus some config changes. This is an important upgrade for validators specifically. We have nothing on consensus layer clients this week. And then we also have a new release on the graph stack for indexer service. This is the TypeScript version, so the old indexer service version. We're looking at version 0.23.5, which introduces a change to return the first chain alias if multiple exist, preferring those without the -mainnet suffix. You are advised to update to align with these changes, but it's not a critical issue that needs to be addressed. So again, this is an important release, but not urgent. Okay, this is all I have for this week. So over to you, Juan.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, getting into Protocol Watch, as always, we have a few things to cover, starting for forum governance. We have updates to the 4 active disputes, mainly GDR29, which was accepted as a draw due to all of the interesting discussion and technical details about a potential determinism issue on the indexer side, due to again potentially old version of GraphNode or RPC issues. Again, if you're an indexer that likes all of those nasty little details of determinism, that thread, which is linked in the agenda, is quite an interesting topic. So yeah, please go ahead and read it. Then we also have for GDR 30, 31, and 32, the fisherman is asking for a resolution of the dispute. We didn't get any answer from the indexer as per the last time that they were disputed also, so this will most likely result in a slash given the coincidences with the previous incident or dispute, but it hasn't been accepted yet. It will probably be accepted this week. For forum research, we don't have any new updates. For the contracts repository, we have a few updates to some open PRs and merged PRs. Again, most of them related to Horizon or the subgraph service. So if you're interested in any of those changes, they are also linked in the agenda. And for the network subgraph, we don't have any new updates since last IOH. I see Kate here, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm going to be handing over to her for Project Watch.
Thank you. Yeah, just sharing kind of similar to where we were at last week in terms of our efforts to support the upgrade indexer. I mentioned it a few weeks ago, was live, that we have now rewards on Sonic, Optimism, Sepolia, and Base Sepolia. And our batch 3 chains, which were Near and Solana, if you look, I'll post a link here, but that has been paused. So those are no longer in the list. So those won't be upcoming. And then we're still working on figuring out the issue with Ethereum, Sepolia, and Chapel with the POI issues that we're having. We thought maybe it was an Aragon versus Geth issue, but now as we do more testing, it looks to be a little more complicated than that, a little out of my depth to go into too much. But we're going to continue our investigations there so we can figure it out. It seems mostly based around the blocks deployment subgraphs that we have. So we'll continue to investigate that and keep you updated. In the forum that I shared, the Notion page, for indexers that are supporting these chains, there are the specific subgraph details that we got from Edgenode. I think Mickey is here. If the upgrade indexer is needing more specific support on subgraphs, the information about many of the indexers who volunteered to support these chains is here. Many of you are here today. We really appreciate the work you're doing. I don't totally have insight to all of that, but if there's anything on the upgrade indexer side, Mickey, that is needed, feel free to maybe put it in the chat or we can discuss it later. And yeah, and what we had mentioned last week, Mark Andre had shared some of the issues that indexers were having with Moonbeam. It looks like it may need to be resolved at the subgraph developer end. So we spoke about that as well. So that's all I've got on my end at this point. And if anything changes upcoming in the future, I'll let you know.
Amazing. Thank you all for your sections there. Mickey seems to have posted an update. Okay, thanks. Just got back from offsite, so nothing from me today, but definitely will let you know if anything comes up. Appreciate the support. Amazing. Thanks for the update there, Mickey. And thanks to Kate, Juan, and Anna for all of the sections there. Okay, wonderful. Well, now we have the good fortune of having Sarah with us today from GraphOps. She's going to be taking us through Graphseer, and I know that we've kind of spoken a bit about this in the past about bringing Graphseer to IOH and having a tighter loop there between the metrics that we're going to be discussing at Network Watch and Graphseer. So this is the first of hopefully many conversations around Graphseer. So without further ado, Sarah, if you're ready to share your screen and hop into the demo, let's get into it.
Yes, thank you, 𝗨𝗀𝗂. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can indeed. It's just loading, but I assume, yeah, okay, I can see it now.
Yes, Graphseer. Okay. Hi everyone, it's Sarah from GraphOps. Today I will be showing you what we have on Graphseer. Graphseer is a graph protocol explorer. I know that many of you are already familiar with Graphseer. You're using Graphseer. We also had another session in IOH some time ago on Graphseer. And we know that most people are using Graphseer already, indexers are using it, allocators are using it. We have been receiving very good feedback and we really appreciate it. But today we also wanted to do another introduction for people who don't know GraphSeer or maybe not using GraphSeer that much. And I will talk to you about some of the recent changes that we have made and share possibly new ways of how you can benefit from GraphSeer. I will be going over the website, just showing the new features, how to use it, and so on. And at the end, we're going to open it up for feedback, how you use GraphSeer, and collect questions as well. But during my presentation, if you have any questions about like the specific page, specific metric, or whatever I'm talking about, please do interrupt me and ask your questions. We also appreciate that, because if you have a question, probably other people also have similar questions. So I would appreciate that. But yes, this is the homepage for GraphSeer. We have the network-wide data. As I said, it's a graph protocol explorer. So we wanted to have that overall view of the protocol. You can see the general metrics like the number of indexers or active subgraphs. We also have 90-day distribution of the total stake, total rewards, and total fees. There's also an card here that updates people about the today's metrics. How many new subgraphs or deployments have been deployed today? How many new delegators do we have? The rewards and the query fees that are generated. And we also have the protocol parameters here. Then we display top indexers. These are ranked by all-time query fees collected. We have top subgraph deployment. These are ranked by current signal, and top subgraphs, again, ranked by current signal. But we also have the general tables where you can see the network-wide data about indexers, deployments, and subgraphs. Sometimes we received feedback like, I cannot find my indexer on GraphSeer. To address that feedback, if some indexer, delegator, or deployment exists on the protocol subgraphs, they exist on GraphSeer because we directly get that data from the subgraphs. So whatever that's on the protocol, it's on GraphSeer. Maybe it's sometimes a typo, sometimes the wrong ENS name, and so on. But you can be sure that your indexer is on GraphSeer. You can see all the indexers here. You can sort by stake tokens, delegated tokens. You can check out the effective query fee cuts, but the default sort is by query fees collected. We also have all the subgraph deployments and subgraphs here. What's more interesting, in my opinion, is the specific profile pages. Here, for an indexer, I picked Pinax. We have the overview for this indexer. You can see their balance, their description, self-provided location, and overall data. We also have some calculated data here, like historical APRs. And if you're ever curious about how these metrics are calculated or derived, we also have a glossary page. If you click on the See More on the tooltip, you can go and read how each of these metrics are calculated. This is also true for metrics like that are specific to the graph, not GraphSeer, like the effective query fee cut, rewards cut, and so on. You can find the descriptions in the glossary page. And then we have other important metrics like the indexer stake, rewards, and so on, delegator allocation, and performance charts. And for all of these, like three, we also have dedicated tabs because those are important information. For instance, for the performance for this indexer, we're querying the quality of service subgraph of the graphs gateway, and you can see the various performance charts for this indexer. We also recently added this time period selection, so you can check how is the performance in the last week or in the last month. I think that this was a feature that was requested by the indexers because they use this tab specifically to check on their indexer's performance. We also have the allocations tab. This is a list of all allocations of this indexer, and we have many columns here about this specific allocation that belongs to this indexer. But what we recently added are the indexer status endpoint data, which are specifically the sync percentage for all of these deployments, and the blocks behind for each of these deployments that for this indexer specifically. We also have a dedicated tab to display the indexer status endpoint data. Not, as you are already aware probably, that not every deployment that an indexer indexes has any location on chain, but this view lets us capture all of the deployments that this specific indexer is indexing and reporting data for. You can see for each of them you have the chain data, sync percentage, and like blocks behind and so on. We also have average blocks behind for each chain and average sync percentage and the deployment numbers calculated for each chain that the indexer is serving queries for indexing subgraphs for. That's on the indexer. We can also go on to look at a specific deployment page. Maybe sort by current signal. So for each deployment, we have a dedicated profile page for that deployment where we can go into the details. We have this top subgraphs notion and other subgraphs here. It's because each deployment can be pointed at from different subgraphs. We rank them by the signal on those subgraphs, and we display the top ones here. If there were multiple, more than two, we would be listing them here. You would also be able to just have an access, a view to all the subgraphs that points to this specific deployment. But we also display all the relevant overview information, rewards, signal tokens, and data from, query fees, and so on for the specific deployment. You can also navigate to the subgraph that points to this deployment and look at the subgraph page specifically. This is different from the deployment page. This is specific to the subgraph. You can also see the subgraph versions. For each version, you know when it's created and which deployment it is pointing at. Yes, and for each deployment, we also have the indexer status endpoint data. Let me also show that. For all the indexer allocations, we also have the synced and held and sync percentage here as well. We recently also divided this data into two because it was more convenient for people to check the active allocations and closed allocations separately. For active allocations, we have this status data, and for closed allocations, we have things like the rewards and the APRs, because that's only relevant for closed allocations. Yes, I think that's all. You can also use these tables to sort by the relevant metrics that you're interested in, or search by specific indexer ID or IDs for deployments and subgraphs, just like in Explorer. I think this is the overall summary of the GraphSeer. I also would like to share one example usage of GraphSeer that we have seen and was very happy at GraphOps to see. It was from an indexer, Jim. I know everybody is already aware of Jim. He has been using GraphSeer to check on his indexer's status, and all the things that I already shared in this. If you go to Jim, on the performance tab, as I said, indexers find this very useful to check on their own indexing status. Also, the general tables give you an idea how you compare to the rest of the indexers. So we've been really happy to see the adoption here and see that people benefit from using GraphSeer. Yes, I think that's all on the demo side. Do you have any questions about GraphSeer, any metrics, anything that I shared before we jump into the discussion part? Okay, then I give it back to Abel for the discussion. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Feel free to leave the Graphia share screen share up so we can have a look. So first thing that'd be great to cover off is you mentioned there about Jim's usage of Graphia, which is awesome. I do see, is Jim still here? Oh, I don't think I can see him. He was here earlier. I was hoping on yeah, he's messaged me, okay. Okay, he can't stick around. Okay, no worries, no worries. I was gonna ask for a couple of words from him, but it seems like he has now dipped, so no worries. Let me just have a look here. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing the screen again. Escape quick, yeah, he's shy. That was really funny because I messaged him and I saw him here. I was like, oh great, he's gonna be here to discuss it. But yeah, no, that's fine. Life happens. Okay, great. Well, a couple of things. So we want to do a few things with you indexers. Uh, uh, in the open discussion part of today's conversation. I can list a few of them. So we've had previous discussions about metrics that you'd like to see, um, just in terms of your indexing operation, and also as part of Network Watch. I have a list of stuff that we have discussed in previous conversations, but re re rehashing that and making sure that that gets communicated to Sahara, who's working on Graphia, would be awesome. So having a discussion on that would be ideal. And then I would love to get into specifics around people's workflows, um, and the way that they do currently, manage making decisions informed by data around their indexing operation, and kind of like see how we can improve that via Graphia. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we want to discuss today. Um, but let's first start off with metrics. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually start the activity, which has all the information, which is right here. So I'm just gonna open up the whiteboard and navigate. I see Mark Andre's typing, so feel free to message before we get into this. Also feel free to uh, come onto the mic if you'd like. Small suggestion, would be great to separate subgraph queries from the other data services. SF is doing a lot of those. I believe the most recent network subgraph allows this. Okay, yeah. Sarah, do you want to comment on that? Yes, the whiteboard is not white. We're actually going to go to the indexing automation one, which is white. So yeah. Oh no, sorry, not that one. IOH 1198, which is not white. I'm sorry about that, Billy. Anyways, Sarah, feel free to address Mark Andre's
Yes.
comment there.
We do actually make a distinction between allocations that are we make a distinction between different deployments. For instance, you click on a deployment, there's no subgraph associated with the deployment, is a data point that's relevant. I was just like going through streaming fast allocations, and I just ranked it by the deployments that have no subgraph names, and you go onto them and see that, okay, you see this deployment is associated with the substreams. This data comes from essentially the manifest or the metadata that associated with this deployment. We were also aware of the fact that there are different types of deployments, and the query fees get a bit vague when that's the case, and we wanted to address this by attaching this like meta information to each deployment, and you can see for deployments that are associated with substreams or unusual deployments that don't associate with a subgraph, we display this card. When it comes to separating the query fees, that would be a bit a different decision. We think that in Graphia we have to be neutral and really show the reality of the network. And one of the realities is that these are the query fees that gone through the network. And so we wanted to be transparent and display the full picture. And that's the decision that we made, both around indicating when an allocation is associated with a substreams deployment and having all the query fees reflected on graphs here. So those were decisions that we made for substream square fees.
Awesome. I see Chris and Marc-Andre are typing as well, so let's keep the conversation going. Okay, so Chris has said separate might just mean categorized, not hidden slash subtracted. Marc-Andre says, all right, thanks for the precisions. I would not hide them, but maybe separate the column. Yeah, separate query fees. Okay, yeah. Any thoughts, Sarah?
Yes, that makes sense. I think that would be a way to create more clarity. I agree.
Amazing, amazing. Any further questions? I'd love to get some questions going for graphs here, because naturally this is something that is going to be informed by a lot of the conversations that happen here, and by a lot of your workflows. So feel free to fire away. In the meantime, I'll keep an eye on the chat. We'll go into IOH 198, which is the last time that we spoke about Network Watch. There's a couple of metrics in here that people suggested. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start reading them out, and then Sarah, you can just share your thoughts on them. You know, do you think this metric makes sense to input into Gracia? What are your thoughts? Where is it on the roadmap? Et cetera, et cetera. So does that sound good?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so the first one is network traffic per chain to understand volume. I believe that was Jim. So tell us your thoughts on that one there. And yeah, we'll go from there. And hopefully this will start a conversation again about metrics that people would like to see. I'm kind of just rehashing some stuff.
Yes, maybe to first talk about what I understand from network traffic per chain. We were thinking about adding, for instance, for each deployment or for each indexer, the activities that indexer or deployment has seen in the protocol. For instance, that might be an indexer opening an allocation. Whenever that happens, whenever there's an on-chain event action, there's an event that's generated, right? So we've been thinking about adding that as a new tab and having that activity flow for each indexer. An allocation is opened in this given time for this deployment. An allocation is closed. There was a new delegation for this indexer. There was new allocation. I mean, I said open, close, delegation. The delegation closed can also be something else, or like any sort of activity that this indexer makes, we can capture that in an activity tab. I think that's already possible by the activity subgraph of the graph protocol. Same thing for deployments. So you can see all the actions that's related for deployment. We could add a tab that shows all the activity feed for that. Again, I think possible by the activity subgraph. Those are the things that we have already thought about and thought that might be useful. Maybe when Jim says a chain-wide traffic, that might be a broader, probably on the homepage somewhere where we display or maybe in a different tab here, chain-wide activity feed, each indexer, each deployment, each event that happens on that chain, again from the activity subgraph, we would be able to put that in a feed. I think that's feasible, and I think that it would be useful. I wonder if other people also would benefit from such a thing. Do you feel a need for seeing the activity feed for a given indexer, deployment, or chain? Is that something that you realized was missing from your flows?
I don't think it's as much like looking at a specific indexer's allocations and what actions that indexer is taking. I think an area that we're missing a lot of insight into is what's happening with our protocol, right? Like where are consumers querying? And by leveraging the quality of service subgraph, we should be able to show metrics around most of the queries are happening on this chain, which would help indexers identify, hey, I'm not yet syncing this chain because I don't know how many subgraphs are indexing that chain. And I don't know what the actual query consumption is on that chain. And I think having some like network health metrics, right, not specific to an indexer, but more geared towards the consumer persona would be really helpful.
Yes, I see. When you say consumer, I think like we can also think. I think the examples that you give may be like indexer consumer persona, right? Or the delegator, or maybe the subgraph developer personas. And for indexers, what's valuable is you said which are the subgraphs that are generating the most queries or query fees. Being able to easily find that information, I think, is definitely valuable. And for delegators, similarly, probably like being able to see which indexer or which subgraph deployment brings the most rewards, or like APR, having that network-wide information would also be useful. Or seeing maybe which indexers have changed their effective rewards cut or effective query fee cut, or maybe has changed their stake, might be useful. Having that information about the indexers that you're already delegated to, or maybe possible indexers that you want to delegate to. For maybe subgraph developers, newly deployed subgraph information might be useful, but that would, might be a bit different. It would have to come from, I think. We would need to approach it from a different point of view, I think. But yeah, I definitely see the value of network-wide activity and network-wide metrics. And this is something that we planned before. For instance, adding the APRs in these columns might be one of the things. And I definitely see the point of having this as a separate, network-wide metrics, but also goes into the same bucket in my opinion, having this like APRs over in these tables is something that is already in our radar. Thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it.
Amazing. Also, we've got here from Marc-Andre other suggestions. We've been talking about new metrics for QoS in Network Watch, time to allocation one. I remember, yes, actually, I was going to bring that up there. I'd love to see that in the GraphSeer tracking as well. So, yeah, do you want to make a comment on that, Sarah?
Could you clarify what's time to allocation mean here? I wasn't a part of that discussion.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was basically, it goes along the same vein that Derek was saying from a subgraph developer of consumer point of view. One metric that could be interesting or matters to them is how long it takes for indexers to start allocating and start serving subgraphs. And there were several other metrics that was mentioned in Network Watch. I don't remember all of those, but I think we should look at the presentation of one of the past presentations, and I'm sure you will find some good ideas in there.
Thank you. I think Abel might be the person to help me with finding that, but
Yes.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying thank you for the feedback. I think the metric around how long does it take for indexers or for a particular indexer to start serving queries might be a good performance metric to add.
Awesome. Let's look at some other ones. So response time to signal is also here as well. Maybe share some thoughts on that, Sarah, if you have any.
Response time to signal. Maybe that means how long does it take for an indexer to like the latency for query delivered versus their signal on that deployment.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think what this is referring to is like, let's say I'm a consumer and I deploy a subgraph, right? And we want to know how long does it take for an indexer to say, hey, I'm allocating on this. Which if you just do it from the time that the subgraph is deployed, it might not give a clear picture because that subgraph may not have any signal and thus it's not attracting any indexers. But once it goes from 0 to a greater than 0 amount of signal, now how long does it take for indexers to pick it up? Right? All of these things are more like, kind of consumer-based metrics, right? So I don't think it's the lens of the indexer that we're necessarily trying to aggregate information on. It's more of like, from the network perspective, I know that I'm definitely interested in this, and I would imagine other indexers are as well. But like looking at, across different networks, what's the average latency on the subgraphs for that network? Or what's the average blocks behind on some of these faster chains? Like Sonic's got really fast block times, whereas Ethereum is, 12 seconds. That's not so bad. And these would all be things that are very useful for a consumer to see, because then they can evaluate like, okay, if I deploy this, roughly how long should it take for me to get an indexer on my subgraph? But from the indexer side, it's useful to kind of know what is our business inflow looking like and where can we improve, right? Do we have high failure rates on specific networks, or are we just really slow to allocate on these things? And it can be kind of a central point for indexers to go to and say, all right, how do we as a network improve on these metrics? That's kind of what I'm envisioning from a network watch perspective.
Yeah, I see. That's a good point. I think good perspective. Thank you for sharing that. That wasn't in our radar yet. I'll be adding that. The time to allocation versus the first signal to indexers being able to serve queries or like allocating to that subgraph. Thank you for providing that. If you have any similar metrics in mind that you've been thinking that you think might be useful, we would appreciate to hear more.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, this conversation we can cover off a few of those. So if we have any, let's get them discussed here, and then it'd be great for you to kind of take that, Sarah, and then noodle on it and see how things get prioritized in the roadmap and developed on.
Yes, and I'm reading the chat. I see that 𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 has also mentioned how people sometimes ask how long does it take for indexers to allocate after I curate it to my subgraph or after I publish my subgraph. So I can see the pattern. Thank you for sharing, Miki.
Another question on a similar vein is, we oftentimes hear how much signal should I add to my subgraph? And having analytics or like a simple explanation of like, the average subgraph with 1,000 GRT signaled has this many indexers. If you have 5,000 GRT signaled, the average is this many indexers. And that way we can kind of just show people like, hey, this is what's currently true. And then add based off of however much support you want.
Any thoughts on that, Sarah? I think that's a fantastic bit of feedback or a suggestion, because it's action oriented as well. It's that like, I think that the best way that this could be useful is if this tool Gracier is actually changes behavior. Like the data that you see on this dashboard can help influence smarter decisions, that's kind of the win. So I like that as a feature suggestion. So yeah, Sarah, any thoughts?
Yes, I do understand how people might be a bit not maybe guided when it comes to how much signal to put in their subgraphs. I think that we don't have that somewhere, right? I don't think that we mention a good amount to signal in the docs or in the studio. I believe we don't really give them a anchor.
Yeah, because it's also not a static thing, right? Like back when we only had 100 subgraphs on the network, you could add 100 and you'd get 6 indexers. But now that we've got 6,000, you add 100 GRT, you're not going to get much. And so having a real-time pull of, the average subgraph with between 1,000 and 5,000 signal has this many indexers. That will give you a sense of this changing dynamic.
Yes, I think that makes sense. Yes, I'm reading the chat. I'm reading, I think, follow up to the curation discussion. Miki is saying that it would be nice if we had a feature where people could toggle and auto curate based on some recommended amount. And at that stage, it might also be, dynamically calculated, looking at the network state, and maybe like targeting 3 indexers, targeting 5 indexers. That would definitely, I think, improve the user experience. But I think like separate to that having the network-wide data is also still useful for indexers too.
That's a great suggestion, Marc-Andre. Did you see that in the chat, Sarah?
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. It would be fun to see those metrics in real time, updating. It's also very fun to see something like this for the graph. Users should be familiar with this experience.
And then we've got another comment here from Vince. Well,
Yeah, I super agree with his framing on that. Mine was backwards.
Any thoughts, Sarah?
Maybe one thing that might not be too clear to the users is why do I need more than one indexer? Because we, I think, repetitively talk about how users are exposed to the like many complexities of the protocol, and having to know how many indexers on average you should target might one of the things maybe we should also try to answer and give a good answer to, what do you think about that? So what's the target number of indexers a user should target anyway?
I think bare minimum is greater than 1, right? Because consumers will, and I just know this from being in channels with different consumers, where it's only indexed by the upgrade indexer, and something happens with the upgrade indexer because it's indexing everything, and then all of a sudden they're getting bad indexer responses, right? And then they pretty quickly learn about the difficulty of having only one indexer. And a lot of the times that's where they're like, we tell them like, yeah, you should add signal so it's not just one person. And so I feel like that education process happens through the consumer life cycle or the subgraph developer life cycle of using the graph. But like on the front end, if we were able to show like, hey, here's the minimum amount that you need to get 2, and here's how much you need to get 5 and 10, then you kind of give the person the flexibility of saying like, okay, well, how redundant do you want to be with your data? Which, we work in a space where data redundancy is a very common thing.
Yes, I think, as you said, over 1, assuming the upgrade indexer, and then for targeting better, not falling for the bad indexer's response, or like probably like too far behind indexers, having multiple over 3, over 5. Maybe adding explanations to what that brings to the user. And Miki suggests maybe abstracting further, saying like minimum redundancy, high redundancy, and so on. And explaining, maybe attaching to each option, what is it that you get by doing this? What could be the alternative, and so on, like in a small explanation.
Amazing. And then Carlos just mentioned here that perhaps maybe availability is a better word from a user perspective in terms of language. So yeah, food for thought there if that's something you want to focus on, Sarah. And then Derek's typing. Feel free to hop on mic if you'd like, Derek, if that's faster. Or
I was going to say something funny and decided against it.
you get
As I was typing it, I was like, it's not that funny.
That's good self-awareness. That's really that. Yeah. But it's kind of, I mean, no pressure, because then it's going to be like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. No, that's good. Yeah. I often do that as well. Actually, I should do that more. There are a lot of things that I say that aren't funny, but I don't stop myself. Okay. Another one, I'm not sure if this was kind of covered off or not. But there's one here about time from signal to allocation to serving queries at chain head, kind of those things. I'm not sure if we've covered that in the conversation, but if we haven't, then I just want to share that with you, Sarah. What do you think?
We did cover the time to signal. What's the other one?
It's a bit more than that. So it's like time to signal to allocation to serving queries at chain head, kind of all of those things.
Oh, yeah. We covered that.
Yeah. Okay.
Essentially, how long does it take for me to get answers to my queries? How long does it take for my subgraph to be ready for me to use after I deployed my subgraph or curated to that subgraph? So what would be the time on average?
Awesome. And then we've got here from Derek, serving queries at chain head is going to be a bad metric because it totally depends on subgraph. Suggesting any average would be misleading. Interesting. Can you elaborate, Derek?
Yeah, like let's say I've got a subgraph with one data source and it's only indexing 10 events, right? We'll think that in minutes, right? Maybe. But, what's the sync time on Uniswap, right? That's going to be much longer. And so trying to form any type of an average as a way to kind of like guide people like, hey, on average, it takes 3 hours to sync a subgraph. Then they're going to think, oh, my subgraph should take about 3 hours. And then they're going to say, well, mine takes 12 hours. And then they're going to say that this is an issue. When in reality, it totally depends on what they're indexing. And so I think giving someone like an overall average might have unintended consequences of people having unrealistic expectations.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my first thought would, after hearing that is, or maybe you could perhaps specify for like certain kinds of subgraphs, um, um, but then that's introducing more complexity, I think, than necessary, because then you'd have to think about, yeah, I think it makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Well, yeah, yeah, scratch that. Any thoughts on any additional metrics? I think it would be ideal to kind of like in the last 5 minutes that we have, get as many thoughts that people have on metrics that would be useful to see at the network level, at the index level, at the consumer level, like whatever is useful. Derek and a few others have said some fantastic ones already, so I'm sure Sarah has a lot to chew on. But would be amazing to hear more if anyone has any. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, just to butt in again. One thing that used to be shown at the different quarterly meetings, or I forget what the name of the exact meeting was, but they used to show like, here's our success rate. It's 99.998, right? We're at 2 nines right now. We want to get to 4 nines. And so just like even just those basic basic metrics, being able for us to see them and get a sense of like, oh, what's happening in the network, I think it would just be very helpful, not only from the indexer perspective of like, if we see that and we're like, yeah, we've got a 96% success rate, then that can inform indexers like, hey, we need to fix some stuff, right? That's not good. But then it'll also inform consumers of like, hey, here's why the graph is awesome, because we have 4 nines or whatever that yeah, exactly, the quarterly update for the graph. And so if we have the ability of first focusing on those metrics so that we can improve the overall quality of service for consumers, I mean, one, we need to know where the problems are. And then two, once we handle the problems, we need to kind of broadcast this out to our potential consumers, like, hey, average query time is 160 milliseconds or whatever it is. But having a single place where that can be shown, I think would be very useful.
One thing about network-wide averages that we have considered internally at GraphOps before is that they might be to some extent very noisy, because you're always going to have very poorly performing indexers and very good performing indexers. So we've been thinking about how to maybe reduce some of that noise and focus on maybe like what's the top 10% indexer performance, or maybe it might also be the top 50 or top 5, but judging the network by the overall latency or overall query success rate might be a bit hard, but focusing on maybe top 10 or like top 30, whatever, but because those are going to be the indexers that you're going to be facing, or top indexers are allocated to most of the subgraphs and so on. So
yeah, you'd want to use some type of a weighted average, right? Like if an indexer only gets one query and it takes them 10 seconds to respond, and someone else has 100,000 and they're at 100 milliseconds, you'd want to use the number of queries as like a weighted average. But it is very common to use like 99th percentile. Like, what's the slowest in the 99th percentile, right? Or your P99 queries. So whether that ends up being like a weighted average or a median or 99th percentile or whatever, I kind of loosely use average as just a metric just to see, where are we at.
Yes, I see. Yeah, definitely. It makes sense.
A quick question for indexers. Which dashboards, if any at all, do you guys currently use? And how do you use those dashboards? I'm very curious. I know that like indexer tools is a big one that people love to use. Jim's a massive fan. Using that the data from indexer tools. but yeah, curious to hear people's perspectives. I see a few people typing. Okay, so Derek's saying indexer tools for allocation management, PG admin for network metrics, graph scan for individual questions about allocation. Okay, got it, got it. That's pretty useful as a breakdown. And Marc-Andre, GraphSeer for ROI metrics. Nice, nice. And then GraphSeer to explore graph scan depending on what I'm looking for. GraphSeer for performance. Explorer live view of indexing status, graph scan for subgraph allocation activity. Yeah, I was gonna say like my follow-up thought, which is kind of what Pili was saying here, is how do people feel about consolidation? About seeing if those metrics were surfaced in GraphSeer, how would how would that impact their flow? Is that something that people would be open to using? I know it's a bit of a leading question or a bit of a loaded question, but I think it's interesting to kind of get some thoughts there. See a few people typing. Yeah, it's similar. I'm in a similar boat to you, Pili, as well. It's like I'm curious. See a few people typing. If network metrics were on GraphSeer, would check this more regularly than writing SQL queries directly on the QoS subgraph. But I don't see us changing. But I don't see us changing away from indexer tools. Yeah, of course that makes sense. It's a very specific tool there, indexer tools. How saying graph scan for allocation tracking, GraphSeer for performance tracking, Explorer for query threes in the last 30 days. Got it. Okay, so network metrics on GraphSeer seems to be something that could be very easily put into GraphSeer to make it more of a useful tool for indexes in their workflow. Okay, cool. Okay, well, I also, want to be mindful of time. I'm very grateful for everyone who's joined us today and given us their time. So I'll wrap just by saying any final thoughts from anyone in the chat or on voice, any indexers, and then I'll hand over to Sarah for final words from her as well. See if people saying thank you, thank you. No one's typing. Okay, Pili's typing. Okay, I'll just hand it over to you, Sarah, for final words from you if you want.
Yes, thank you everyone for your contributions today. We really appreciate the feedback, and we're happy to see that people are using GraphSeer. And yes, please keep using GraphSeer and keep us updated about your feedback. Thank you.
Amazing. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, everyone, for today's conversation. This was super insightful. We'll be doing more stuff with GraphSeer and network level metrics in the Network Watch recurring section. So keep your eyes peeled and for that, and stay tuned. And yeah, we'll see you again same time next week, 5 p.m. UTC. Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.